It is playoff time in the NBA, and Dame Lillard, as I said he would, always knows what time it is. The NCAA College Football Committee has approved several rule changes that are really going to change the game forever. And later on in this show, we will have former NFL scout Russ Lande joining us to tell us what actually happens in the war rooms on draft day. That and more coming up on Sports Talk with Dad right now. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Sports Talk with Dad. As always, my name is Kyle, and I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, a man whose face is imprinted on the pyramids, my dad, Tim.
Wow.
One of the first ones, too.
Really?
You go back to the beginning of the hieroglyphics, and it's like, hey, I know that guy. So how do they do it?
Not a clue.
Did you survive the flood? Is that what happened?
I've got some big news. Just ignoring you today. So, the Rock and Roll Hall of
Easy
Fame.
for you to say.
Yeah, not. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announced its 2024 inductees.
Okay. I saw Cher was one of them.
Mary J. Blige.
Okay.
Cher.
Yeah.
The Dave Matthews Band.
Yep.
Foreigner. Well-deserved.
I'm surprised they're not in.
I am too, actually. Peter Frampton, another one I'm kind of surprised wasn't in.
I am too.
Cool in the Gang.
Okay.
Ozzy Osbourne as an individual contributor. He's already in there for Black Sabbath. And a Tribe Called Quest, which I have no idea who they are.
I looked them up. They're a 90s hip-hop band. I don't know. I'd never heard them before either.
Okay. I have a big problem with that list.
Is this a Monkees thing again?
Yes, it is a Monkees thing. Do you realize the Monkees are the only group in history, not even the Beatles, had 4 number ones in the top 200 in one calendar year? The Monkees did. The Monkees had some of the greatest music of the 60s. They need to be in the Hall of Fame.
Monkees were a made-for-TV band.
But they also put out some incredible music.
Okay, are the Brady Bunch in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
They didn't put out incredible music.
Are the, what's that other one you
Partridge
like?
Family?
Yeah, are they in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
They didn't put out incredible
They
music.
had
either.
a number one hit.
They did. They did.
So you can't say that.
Well, they had, I Think I Love You is the name of
I think I love you.
Yeah. David Cassidy. I don't think
And the
he's
Sundance Kid?
No, just David Cassidy. I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame, but the Monkees need to be in there before Mickey Dolenz passes away. He's the only monkey left.
Is he?
Yeah, Michael Nesmith died, I think, here in Milwaukee.
They're just out monkeying around?
I'm serious. The Monkees need to be in the Hall of Fame.
They're a made-for-TV band.
I don't care. They put out great records and they performed their own records. They sang them.
Did they even tour?
Yes.
Did they?
Yep.
I really don't know.
To huge crowds. They were massive when
Why
they
aren't they
toured.
in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I don't know. Probably because they were a made-for-TV band.
Okay.
But
Doesn't that disqualify them?
No,
Why?
because their music was some of the best music of the 1960s.
All I know is, hey, hey, we're the Monkees.
You had Last Train to Clarksville, Daydream Believer, Pleasant
That's an old
Valley
song.
Sunday.
I don't know that one.
Well, I'm not singing it. Stepping Stone,
I don't know that one either.
great songs.
I know the 3 of them that you named. And those are great songs.
They are.
All redone better by Smash Mouth. But,
Last Train to Clarksville.
I thought that was a
Did you-
Beatles song.
Nope, that's a Monkey song. Do you know that was an anti-war song?
I didn't.
It was, and it was an anti-Vietnam. The Last Train to Clarksville was actually you're getting on the train to go to Vietnam.
Oh, really? Well, if you look at a lot of the songs, like Born in the USA was a very anti-Vietnam song.
It's not a patriotic song
It is not.
like they've tried to make it.
Well, that was George W. Bush. That's why he doesn't play
Do you
it
know
anymore.
Bruce Springsteen has only had one number one song and he didn't even sing it?
I didn't know that.
Manfred Mann and his Earth Band redid a song in the 70s that Bruce wrote. And it's going to escape me now, but that was his only number one hit.
It wasn't, what was that one where Courtney Cox came on
In
stage?
Cadillac or?
The music video. Dancing in the Dark or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it wasn't number one.
Really?
Nope.
I didn't know that. Is he in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Springsteen?
Yeah.
Has to be.
I don't know.
I think he is. So Clarence Clements should also be in there, his saxophone player.
Yeah.
The E Street
I got
Band
to
should
see-
be in there.
I got to see one, if not the last show that Clarence was in.
I would have loved to have seen
It
them.
was at Harley Fest in Milwaukee years ago. I don't know how long ago it was. but they brought the E Street Band back for like the first time in a while for this. It was like the 105th anniversary, if not the 100th anniversary of Harley Davidson. And they were there. Heck of a show. It was awesome. And they had Clarence there. And then I think within the year, he died. It was like one of his last shows.
It wasn't the 100th because they brought in Elton John for that one.
That would have also been awesome.
It would have been, but Elton John and Harley Davidson.
Perfect mix.
Really?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Why not? It sounds fun.
I think it was fun. I think anybody who saw them had a great time.
Elton John, I've heard, puts on one heck of a show.
I screwed up once. I had a chance to go and see, he and Billy Joel did a concert together and toured a little bit.
Yep.
I had a chance to go and see that.
You didn't?
I didn't.
I saw Billy Joel. He was really good.
I'd love to see Billy Joel.
It was an awesome show because he's sober again, which is really exciting. You also had a chance to see Queen.
Twice.
And your appendix kind of let you down. Yeah, but you got to see Queen with Freddie.
I had a chance to see Queen with Freddie.
And you didn't.
No.
And you failed. You should have went. You should have just died. I mean, what better than dying seeing Freddie Mercury live?
I got up in the emergency room, got up off the table and said, I'm going.
Yeah.
I'll be back. And I got to the door and, of course, threw up. And the doctor just kind of laughed and said, yeah, you're not going anywhere.
You should have kept walking. It's on you, man. I don't feel bad. You should have died.
It was in Chicago. I don't think I could have made it to Chicago. I was pretty sick that day.
With the burst appendix?
Yeah.
Probably not.
It didn't burst. It was right on the edge. By the time I would have gotten back, it would have been bad.
Well, you failed. That was That was Freddie Mercury, man.
I know.
In 1909.
No.
What was it, the 70s or the 80s, Freddie?
Late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, that's prime.
Yeah.
Prime Queen. You failed.
Big time.
I'm mad at you. And I wasn't even really alive when Freddie Mercury was
I'm never going to try to see Queen again. One time it was the appendix. The next time I got hit by a drunk driver. God is trying to tell me, don't go and see Queen.
Yeah. We're not letting you have this happen.
No.
We're going to move on to sports, but before we do, we have to remind you that Sports Talk with Dad is brought to you by Family Farms.
Welcome to Family Farms, where our culinary journey is woven with passion, dedication, and a commitment to crafting the finest bacon-wrapped chicken, a timeless delicacy that has tantalized the taste buds since 1974. At Family Farms, we're more than just a traditional name. We've evolved into purveyors of gourmet delights. Join us on this flavorful adventure, where every bite tells a story of tradition, quality, and the enduring spirit of Family Farms.
I can't watch that commercial this early in the show. I'm always hungry after I watch that commercial.
It looks so good.
It drives me nuts. But we have other stuff to talk about today, mainly me being right on this show again.
Oh, my God.
What time is it?
Dame time.
It is Dame time.
What a performance. 35 points in the first half.
Yeah, and then what a performance by the rest of the Bucks team.
Yeah.
Because obviously they are all over Dame Lillard the rest of the game. Middleton stepped up. Lopez stepped up. Connaughton stepped up. It was just a great team performance.
By the way, one of the best trades they made, Pat Beverly, has been a great addition.
He has. It was a different Bucks team. But what did I say? This is why you got Dame Lillard right here. Because when playoff time comes and Giannis isn't there, Dame Lillard's going to step up.
It was a different team last night.
I tell you what, it needs to look like this more often. This needs to be a Kobe Shaq situation where Kobe is the star of that team and Giannis just has to accept that he's the big man down below.
I'm not agreeing with you. I mean, Giannis is famous for starting at the top of the key and driving to the lane.
And he's not doing it anymore.
He brings the ball up occasionally. That has to stop.
Can't do it anymore. This is Dame Lillard's team. And Giannis, if he can accept playing second fiddle in Milwaukee,
they might have a chance.
Nobody's going to stop the Bucks. They will beat the Celtics and anybody in the West, including the Denver Nuggets, who I think is going to be in the finals again this year.
That would be a great finals if it was the Bucks with Dame playing the way he did last night and Giannis controlling the middle.
It's playoff time. It is Dame time. He is going to step up. All the people that wrote off the Bucks, listen, it's been one game. I get it. It's been one game, but this is what Damian Lillard is like all the time in the playoffs. The only thing that lets him down is his teammates.
There was one downside to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that was having to listen to you.
All night.
My God. It was so ugly. He goes, "You watching the Bucks?" I said, "Yeah, I've got them on. They look great tonight." I called that, by the way.
I did. And it may change. And so I need to make sure I get this out of my system. Now, remember, we record this Tuesday, so there's going to be a game after we record this. But I tell you what, it's still going to stand. Damian Lillard is going to light it up again.
The biggest advantage the Bucks have, they can afford to sit Giannis and let him heal.
Yeah, they're gonna blow out the Pacers. It wouldn't surprise me if they won in a sweep in this series. And they're going to go on to the next round. Giannis is going to be back, and the Bucks are going to make a run at this, man. This is why you brought in Dame Lillard. He's even shouting after he makes a three-pointer when the whole entire crowd is yelling Dame time. He's beating his chest saying, this is why you brought me here.
Well, and
this is why they brought him here.
It is exactly why. And he also spoke out because there was a lot of commentary in the news and whatever saying he's not happy in Milwaukee. He doesn't want to be there. And he came out and said, when was the first, last, or any time I ever said I don't want to be here?
Right.
This is a great team and a great organization. I'm here to win a championship.
And that's what the Bucks are going to do this year.
That would be, after the season they had, what did I tell you last show? They had to find a way to flip a switch.
They flipped that switch.
They flipped that switch.
Dame Lillard is that switch.
He is.
And Giannis needs to come back and accept that role.
He's got to be allowed to. I mean, he was making threes from half court practically.
Right.
I mean, it was insane. It was just get him the ball.
This is what he does.
Yeah.
Now, that sidestep move, I don't fully understand how that's not traveling. I'm not going to lie.
It's the NBA. Leave it alone.
I'll take it when it's for the Bucks that I cheer for. But the question is going to be when Giannis comes back, can he accept playing second fiddle to Dame Lillard?
This is where Doc has to step up as a coach, Doc Rivers, obviously, and have a conversation with Giannis.
I don't think he can. I don't think he's that kind of coach.
He's good with veterans. I think he can have that conversation with Giannis and say, look, we've got to play differently in the playoffs.
Well, and listen, if you can really set up that pick and roll and Giannis can just be that big man down below, he'll have a 50-point game again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Dame will get him the ball.
Right. Dame first half, Giannis second half. It's over. It is done. But speaking of greatness, apparently Scottie Scheffler needs to have a pregnant wife more often.
He has won now 4 of the last 5 tournaments he's entered, and in the other one, he finished second.
Yeah, tied for second.
I mean, it was just, he has been, and in the Masters and this week, it was inevitable. He was up by 5 shots with 3 left to play in this one. He is playing as close to Tiger in his prime as we've seen. The only difference is Scottie doesn't have Tiger's personality.
He doesn't.
Nobody does.
I mean, he's not. He just kind of sits in the back and does his thing.
He's a very religious man. He's he's an emotional man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's shed tears after winning.
Yep.
He's very grateful for where he's at.
Yeah.
And his wife is very grateful where he's at because she's at home waiting to have a baby, and yet he's still on the road just playing and playing and playing.
She knew what she signed up for. I mean, I know that sounds bad to say that, but that's the reality of the situation.
Look,
this guy's got to go home, got to go out and bring home some money.
He's brought home a lot.
Yes, he has.
And he's got a private plane waiting the minute.
Yeah.
It's very similar to when Phil won the U.S. Open, or was in the U.S. Open. Payne Stewart won that year.
Yeah.
Phil was ready to walk off 16, 17, wherever he was. If he got that notice, he was taking off for the plane.
Yeah, RG3 had that situation. He was at some college football game, and he got the notice and took off.
He booked it.
You go and work, but then when you got to go, you got to go.
Right.
Just how it works.
Well, maybe we'll have to find that out someday if you and your lovely wife decide to have another child.
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you for the offer, but
I would love to see another little grandchild running around.
If that's what is decided in the universe that happens, then that's what happens, but definitely will not be a planned thing. No,
know that feeling very well. College football.
Ooh,
finally
this is overdue.
It finally comes into the 21st century.
Yeah.
Helmet communications are being added.
Yeah, it's the NFL rules. And
tablets
so
on the sideline.
That's an interesting one.
I cannot believe that hasn't happened before.
I'm surprised it did happen this year.
Really?
I am. I'm very surprised that this happened this year.
Why?
The reason they have the tablets on the sideline more than anything is to challenge, but that's not true because they have the big things, but they don't have challenge in college football. I got to imagine that that's coming soon. If not, I don't know. It's just because, I mean, think how long it's been since they've added the helmet communication in football. I guess I just didn't expect the NCAA just to go all in.
Well, and they're also adding the automatic timeout at the end of the second and fourth quarters.
That is
Which
another big change.
They've never had before. I always wait
NFL
for it.
rules.
It's the NFL rules. Exactly. And they're
I
getting
don't
more.
know how I feel about that.
What, the timeouts?
Where it's an automatic. I mean, it's a TV timeout.
It's
Let's
a
call
TV
it what it
timeout.
is. It's a
Yeah.
TV timeout with 2 minutes left. I don't know. I kind of like that the clock kept running, kept the game moving. You had to really have that strategy ahead of time. You know, the 2 minutes is like, okay, now we're in a different ball game, where college doesn't get that. Like, you have to find that gear without that clock stopping.
I've always kind of, it's like 2 minutes. Where's the TV timeout? I'm so used to it from the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know how I feel about that one.
The
I don't
helmet-
know if I'm the biggest fan.
the helmet communication's long overdue.
Well, yeah. I mean, now Michigan can't cheat anymore.
They didn't. Well, they did, but they really didn't. But they beat,
I mean, I don't blame them for what they did.
they beat Ohio
but
State, which is really
with
all that matters
cheating.
to me.
With
No.
cheating. Yeah.
It wasn't cheating.
They cheat all 3 times, too.
No. They won the national
Okay, the
championship.
third time was because we had no quarterback. But, I mean, they cheated to beat us twice. So it doesn't count. And now Harbaugh leaves and they get hit with a bunch of fines.
Which always happens.
But they didn't take away the championship,
They did not.
which they should have.
I've always thought there should be a rule that if a coach leaves to go to the pros, but then wants to come back to the college, they've got some penalties waiting for him to come back.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
It's never going to work that way.
I mean, Michigan should have their championship taken away.
No, they should not.
100%.
No.
Specifically because it's Michigan.
Yeah, that's the only
For those of
reason
you
you
that
say
can't
that.
see the banner behind me, I'm a huge Ohio State fan, so I don't really care how great Michigan was last year. And they were the best team in college football. That's one of the
Who
best
was?
teams. Michigan was.
Yes, they
That
were.
was one of the best teams I've ever seen.
Yes.
But if Ohio State had a quarterback, they win that game.
Maybe
Okay,
not.
Come on.
No.
Come on.
You don't know that.
If Ohio State had a quarterback,
No, not necessarily.
and if Marvin Harrison doesn't get hurt the year before,
Well,
they win a
they
championship.
would have beat Alabama
Georgia.
or Georgia. Thank you for correcting
It
me.
was a missed field goal away from beating Georgia anyway. Marvin Harrison is there, they win. That's 2 national championships stolen from
Not
us.
stolen. You just didn't win it.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's going to win it someday.
What do you think that is really going to change with college football now that we have the helmets and now that we have the tablets on the sideline?
Tablets are going to be nice for the offensive line to see what happened during their last series. It'll be nice for the quarterbacks to see what happened, see if he was missing something on the defense. That's how they use it in the NFL.
Do you think this is going to bridge the gap more for the quarterbacks and other players heading into the NFL now that they're used to making in-game adjustments more often?
It will make them more comfortable with it, but the biggest problem with college football that they've got to address is that NIL. I mean, that's going to destroy the game if they don't do something about
It needs
it.
to stop being a recruiting tool. They need to stop making the transfer portal free agency. The name, image,
Yes.
like it's great. I said it from the word go. It was I really liked it for Olympic
Sure.
swimmers. That's where I really thought of, because I always think of Missy Franklin, who was 15 years old when she won a bunch of gold medals, couldn't cash in because she had a scholarship waiting for her to Stanford, and then got hurt and just was never the same swimmer again and never got the chance to cash in on millions of dollars she should have gotten as a 15-year-old winning gold medals. So that's how I've always thought of it. What I didn't anticipate was that it was going to become what it is now, which is just a disgusting money grab. I don't blame the kids. I want to make that clear. I don't blame any of the kids
No.
for taking advantage of this. Good for you. But the schools shouldn't be helping them get paid and use this as a recruiting tool to bring kids in.
At the same time, I can remember a time back when Ron Dane was at Wisconsin. Wisconsin made millions off of his jersey sales, and he got
Right.
none of it.
Well, that's what I'm
not
saying.
right either.
He should make money off of those jersey sales. 110%. They should be allowed to be in commercials and make money that way. I am all for all of that. I am saying the school should not be paying these kids to come to their school. I think that's wrong.
It's the boosters behind the schools paying that
And
money.
it was
and it's
happening
wrong.
anyway, but
Yeah, under the table.
now that it's out in public, it's like, wow, this is crazy.
This is going to push the top 5 or the Power 5 conferences to break off on their own.
Yeah, 100%.
Got to have a new organization to run football, probably basketball, just to set some new rules in place around NIL to try to put that genie back in the bottle at least a little bit.
I don't know how you can. Unless you do a blow up like that where the conferences just run themselves and you just start making new rules on this.
Well, it's not going to be just one conference. It's going to be all of them making the rules together and coming down with something that makes more sense. When you chase Nick Saban out of coaching, there's a big problem.
Well, Nick Saban also, it was time for him to go.
Beside that point, though, he actually testified, I'm leaving because I don't want to have to re-recruit my own kids.
Yeah, I like the system where I got to keep the kids I want.
Sure.
'Cause where else are they going to go? Yeah, I'm sure he liked that.
Well, he did, but he also then, the transfer portal was something different, which is now turning into a disaster. Transfer portal, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've always thought the transfer portal should be there in case a coach leaves.
That's what I was just going to say.
If a coach leaves, the kid should have the ability to leave. Not what happened at Wisconsin this year, where 3 or 4 of their starters on the basketball team have left.
Right.
And now Wisconsin's got to start recruiting again and just trying to bring in new talent.
Right. You signed up to be here. This is where you are. But I also understand, and I've talked to other players that have gone places and were promised a lot of things, and what they were promised never came to fruition. So, I mean, there's different situations where you can go. It's a nightmare. Another nightmare situation for some is what the Washington Redskins just did with their prospect. This happened a little bit ago, but we haven't had the chance to talk about it yet. And I really wanted to know your opinion on this.
On what? On bringing in, what did they do? 22 players?
22 prospects at once. I love it.
San Francisco was the first one to do this. They'd bring them in just to see how they interacted with each other. I'm sure that.
Yeah, but they had 4 quarterbacks there at once.
That's the one I'm shocked at. They brought in the top 4 prospects other than Caleb Williams, obviously, because everybody thinks he's going to the Bears.
Right.
But if I'm those 4 quarterback prospects, I'm having a problem with this, and I'm sitting back watching what Washington is doing and how they're treating me.
How are they treating you? They're saying you need to come in and compete. They're setting the expectations right away. You need to come in and compete. And then I want to see how you act. I love it from this perspective of, okay, I'm going to see how this kid reacts when we have other quarterback recruits here. Let's see his reaction to it and how he handles it. Because there's going to be situations where these kids are going to struggle in the NFL, especially this group of quarterbacks, because I don't think any of them are going to work out. And you're going to have people behind you brought in. How are you going to act in those situations? And it really tests that character. I think it's a smart idea. Now, it sounds like they kind of caught these kids off guard.
Big time.
And that's
if you're
a different situation. But how many times are we going to see, look what happened to Justin Fields and Russell Wilson this year? Russell Wilson, look what we saw happen with Kenny Pickett.
Well, wait a minute.
All of a sudden they bring in Russell Wilson, kid starts demanding a trade.
Yeah, well, that was a character issue.
Okay, well, now you're going to get to see these character issues right now.
I think if you bring them in, if I'm one of those quarterbacks, they've seen all my tape. They know who I am. They've talked to me individually.
Right.
To bring me in and see the guys I'm going up against in the draft, I'd be a little shocked, and I might sit back and say, okay, Washington, how are you going to treat all of us here at the same time? I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me, which I think is always what an interview should be.
But if they bring, if I'm in that situation, right?
Okay.
I sit back and I just laugh about it because I know the game is being played here. You want to see how I react when you bring in competition for me. How am I going to react? Because that's what this is. It's no different than walking into a depth chart and having 2 other quarterbacks that want your job and are going to give it their best every single time. Now you're walking in with the top quarterbacks that are going to be given a chance to start in this league at some point. And now let's see how you react in this type of situation, because it's a job interview. That's exactly what that is. And you're just walking into a job interview where they have it. I equate it to actors in Hollywood. Right? You got to walk into an audition room where you see a bunch of people that look just like you going for the same job.
Sure.
How are you going to act in that situation? There's no difference here. And Washington's just bringing him in and saying, okay, how do you react when we have other people here? Because we might not pick you. This is your competition. How do you act when we actually say this might not be you?
I think they've got to go in and they can't change who they are. They've got to just be themselves.
They can't, but I don't blame Washington for wanting to see that character.
You always want to see the character. And the thing that makes this year so unique, and we'll talk to Russ about this, there's 4 quarterbacks that are probably going to go in the top 10 picks.
Maybe.
No, probably. I mean, you've got Williams, you've got Daniels, You've got Drake May, you've got J.J. McCarthy.
Yep.
The Vikings are going to try to trade up, I think. They may even try to trade up to number 3.
They might. The Patriots have been very clear that 3 is open for business. I can see Washington trading out, honestly. I don't think they will. And here's the thing, too. With Washington bringing in those guys, they know who they're picking.
Oh, of course they do.
They knew. So say they wanted Jaden Daniels. Okay, we want Jaden Daniels to be our quarterback. Let's see how he reacts in this situation.
Here's the thing.
I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it's a brilliant idea.
I don't envy anybody that goes to New England or Washington. You've got defensive coaches in both places.
I mean, Washington, you have one of the best receivers in the league.
I know. I get that. But when you're looking at these guys, it's all about the situations they walk into that's going to determine more than their talent whether they'll succeed. And I'll use Jordan Love as an example. If Jordan Love goes any place but Green Bay, he may not get a second contract.
No, you got to sit. I mean, it's proven time and time again. You got to sit at least a year.
And these guys aren't going to be given a chance. Caleb Williams is going to be expected to play and is going to expect to be the next C.J. Stroud. There's only one C.J. Stroud. Right. Much as I hate to say that. But he was...
Where did he play college football again?
I think he played in Illinois. Purdue.
The something. Oh, that's right. The Ohio State University.
But
that's what it is.
Those kind of guys don't come around. He was in a great situation.
Yeah, he was brought in with 2 other rookie wide receivers that he got along with really well and that were ready to break out also.
And Jordan Love was brought in at a time when he had a lot of rookie wide receivers or second-year players, but he was able, because of the Packers organization, which I have my own problems with on some things, but Jordan Love got great coaching for 3 years.
Yeah, he did.
Just like Aaron Rodgers did.
Yep.
So
great coaching for 1 year with Tom Clements.
2 years.
Okay, last year too. You're right. He was on this. Yeah, he was on the staff last year.
And he's going to be on there again this year. I mean, Tom Clements is an outstanding quarterback coach. But if I'm one of these guys, I want to go to a place where I'm going to have an offensive-minded coach. Minnesota is the best situation that I can see right now. Denver just makes a trade for Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
It happened about an hour before we came on the air. That's going to be interesting because obviously Peyton thinks he can fix Zach Wilson.
Yeah. The Jets gave him away.
Completely. They swapped 6th and 7th round picks, and the Jets
paying part of his contract.
Jets are paying part of it. But you get a situation like that, that means that I don't think Denver is going to draft Penix or Nix.
I do.
You still think they're going to grab one of them?
100%. I think they're going to trade back and pick up Nix. I think Nix is a great fit for there. I mean, there are 2 quarterbacks I believe in, and I've said that from day one. It's Nix and Penix Jr.
The 2 lowest rated quarterbacks in this draft.
Those are the 2 guys. If anybody's going to be a star out of this league, it's going to be those 2. One, it gives them a chance to go to the right situations. I think that Nix late in the first, I think Denver's going to trade back. I think late in the first, Nix goes to Denver. And I think Penix Jr. goes in the second round to the Raiders.
Well, now's a good time. Let's bring in Russ and let's have these conversations around the draft.
We are very fortunate to have former NFL scout and executive Russ Lande. Russ, can you just give us a little rundown on your background?
Sure. I've been really fortunate. I worked as a scouting assistant, initially as an unpaid intern, working my way up to a scouting administrator with the LA/St. Louis Rams. Then I worked for the NFL Today Show for 2 years. I was sort of Jim Nance's information guy. XFL for a year, the original XFL. And then I jumped and worked for the Cleveland Browns for 3 years. Left that job on my own accord. Moved back to New York and ended up getting into media, covering the NFL draft, running my own scouting company for almost 10 years. Then out of the blue, an opportunity came to run the U.S. scouting for a team in the CFL, and I ended up working in the CFL for 10 years for 3 different teams. Had an amazing experience learning about another league, another way of scouting. And that ended in December. Now I'm a professor at Concordia University here in Chicago. So it's been a weird winding road, but I've been fortunate to be involved in pro football since '94 in some way, shape, or form.
So I have to ask this before we get into you agreeing with me on my opinions and telling my father why he's wrong. But before I ask that, when you're scouting for NFL and CFL, is it any different because of the field size?
It's not so much different because of the field size. I think the biggest difference for scouting in the CFL is there's really 2 things. Firstly, is scouting Canadian players, because 21 of the 45 players on my roster have to be Canadian, and 8 of my 24 starters must be Canadian.
Really?
So finding Canadian citizens that can play football at a high level to play professionally is very hard, because obviously football is not the biggest sport in Canada because there's that game they play on ice.
Yeah.
The other big difference to me is you're trying to find obviously the best players possible to come to Canada when you're a CFL scout, but most of them aren't going to work out in the NFL. So you're trying to find the fringe guys that really are good, but that aren't going to be longtime NFL guys. Whereas in the NFL, you're just trying to find the best of the best of the best. So that's the hardest difference scouting-wise, going to the CFL and finding that tightrope of where you can find players. Whereas in the NFL, it's about not just the best players, but getting that character right, because that's why most players fail that are high draft picks and don't succeed in the NFL.
Well, and before we get into the actual players and the actual draft, I have a structural question that I've wanted to ask. We've talked about it on the show a few times. In Green Bay right now, there's really 3 silos. Gutekunst takes care of all the personnel decisions up to and including, like last year, it was Goody's decision to continue with Anders Carlson, the kicker, rather than bringing in a veteran at the end of the year. LaFleur doesn't seem to be involved in player personnel decisions at all, and they both roll up to Mark Murphy, the president and CEO of the Packers. Does that happen in other organizations, or is this just that aberration that's weird about the Packers and so far they've been getting away with it?
No, it's not an aberration. Teams like the Bears, the Giants, the Chargers have always been GM-centric teams where the GM is in charge. The coach may have some influence, like in San Diego, obviously, well, LA now with the Chargers. Coach Harbaugh is obviously going to be very involved. And in this case, because it's Coach Harbaugh, he may have the final say, which I would be stunned if he didn't. But historically, the Chargers have always been run by the GM. The Bears the same way, the Giants the same way. A number of teams are run that way. On the other side, you have teams like the Patriots, the 49ers, where they are run by the head coach. The head coach is making all the decisions. I don't think there's one way that works better or worse, but I think the most important facet and the reason teams succeed, regardless of whether the coach or the GM is making the final call, is that they're communicating. So if the scouting department is scouting the players properly to put them in front of the coaches so that they understand they're putting players in front that fit the system the coaches want to run. As long as there's communication, it doesn't really matter who has the final say.
So basically the Packers have it wrong because LaFleur and Gutekunst both roll up to Mark Murphy, and I think that's the biggest issue we have in Green Bay is that they're not communicating. That's a big issue.
That's a big issue, no question. But remember, I don't know, I haven't been in their building. I'd be very surprised if there isn't communication between the two. I just think it really comes down to the fact that the GM is the one making the personnel decisions. It doesn't mean they're not talking. I'd be stunned if they're not talking because their GM there, he grew up in the Packers system. He understands how they do it, that the GM is in charge, but you have to have communication with the coach to be successful. I'd be stunned if he isn't doing that now. Doesn't mean there aren't going to be disagreements, but there are a lot of buildings where the GM and head coach are sort of on silos and they report to a person above them. If they're communicating. And I would be stunned if they're not, based on the success they've had. It's very uncommon to have success when your coaching and scouting aren't at least communicating decently, if not very well.
So you're telling me just to have more faith in the Packers?
Well, I mean, hey, I'm surprised Love has turned out as good as he did. But yes, have faith in them. They've made a lot of good decisions. They've done a lot of things the right way over the past 15 to 20 years, obviously. So I think they're going in the right direction.
So one more Packer question, then we'll move on to our friends in the a few miles south down by you. So Jordan Love had a impressive second half of the year, I think it's safe to say.
Yep.
I'm still not 100% sold on him because I want to see him play another year.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Kyle thinks he's already being fitted for a gold jacket.
It's already there.
What do you see from him? What are the pitfalls he's going to be walking into?
Well, I'll say this. Firstly, you can never get too excited for any quarterback's first year as a starter in the pros. Because one of the great challenges is after this year, trust me, every team, especially now with all the data that's available, whether it's Pro Football Focus or Sports Info Solutions, the film connected to the data, every team is analyzed and they know exactly what Jordan is good at and what Jordan is bad at. And you can be sure this coming season, teams are going to sculpt the defense that he has to go against to take away everything, or as much as you can, that he is really good at. And they're going to make him become good at what he's bad at, or he's going to fail. So if you look around the history, and I always throw this out as a great example, the best way to say it is the offensive rookie records for quarterbacks prior to Peyton Manning breaking them all were held by Rick Meyer.
Wow.
Because Rick Meyer had a great rookie year. And then as teams figured out what he did and didn't do well, he was not able to sustain that success. There are a lot of quarterbacks who do well early. You see how it goes that second and third year. So I saw a lot of strides from Love last year. I think there's a lot to be excited about. How will he adjust when teams take away the things he's good at? That's the big challenge. So it's better to be in that position than to be a team that just gave up on their quarterback. But just look at what happened to Mac Jones. Great rookie year, offensive rookie of the year. In the last 2 years, he'd been awful to the point where he was traded for a 6th-round pick.
Russ, I don't like that you're raining on my parade right now, okay? This guy's a Hall of Famer, and you're raining on my parade.
He's being honest.
He played well. I'm not knocking him. I thought they were going to be in real trouble the first half of the year. I thought he looked mechanical, robotic, didn't make decisions. But the second half, he started to get comfortable. It looked like the game slowed down for him. But like I said, everything, this whole offseason, teams are picking apart his strengths and weaknesses. And we'll find out probably by week 8, okay, is this kid able to adjust and do things well that teams are trying to take away? Or is this kid going to have to spend a whole year fumbling around and maybe we see a breakthrough in his third year as a starter?
So by week 8, we're going to all realize that Jordan Love is a Hall of Famer. That is what is about to happen. And hey, Jordan Love can throw to his left, okay? Rick Meyer couldn't throw to his left. That was his big issue.
That's great. I love it.
Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the quarterbacks coming up in this draft. We've heard 4 in the top 10, maybe as many as 6 in the first round. Honestly, I'm not really sold on any of these guys, but Kyle has a deep dislike, not for the talent of Caleb Williams, but the intangibles.
Tell me why I'm right that this kid's going to be the biggest bust we've seen since Ryan Leaf.
Well, I don't know if there's a bigger one than Jamarcus compared to Leaf.
Well, Jamarcus didn't try.
Right.
I think Caleb is going to try. Just like Ryan Leaf tried, he just wasn't mature enough for the position. And that's what I see with Caleb Williams. I see a guy that's not mature enough to lead a franchise.
Well, I'll say this, and I don't want to be that guy who dodges that part. I've not gone into the school. I haven't spoken to any of the people at USC to really get a feel for what Caleb is like. So I can't speak directly to his character. And I really am hesitant to say anything about whether he's a hard worker or that sort of thing. Just from the film, I've over the last 20 years spent a lot of time developing a quarterback system that started in 1998. And I chart every throw these guys make, and I grade all their decisions. Caleb is only the 3rd quarterback I've ever graded that charts out and in my system grades out extremely high that I am not a big fan of actually from watching the film. Almost every quarterback that charts out high, I like. I have 2 major concerns with Caleb. When I watch him, I believe, and I don't know if it's due to his desire to be a star, I don't know if it's his over-reliance on his tremendous physical talent, but too many times there is a quick, easy throw that he seems to turn down to wait for a big play. And when you get to the NFL, and whether you want to look at a Joe Burrow or even a Jordan Love the second half of last year, the best quarterbacks, obviously they want to make the big play. They all do. But they read the defense. They identify, wow, here's a quick, easy 6-yard throw, and I'm going to get 14 out of it. They make it without even blinking. It's instantaneous when they see it. With Caleb, I see he sees the play, and he says, you know what, I'm going to wait and see what else is there. But if you wait and see what else is there, it's gone. And in the NFL, it's not only gone, but usually sacked. So that's one thing that really concerns me with him, is just that sort of wanting to wait and wanting to make the big play. The other thing that I worry about when I watch him is, and I don't know if this is something sort of that grew into how he plays or just is who he is, but he seems to enjoy or like to try to make throws from bad arm angles. And he's remarkable at doing it in terms of accuracy. And I think there's something there that people see when they see Patrick Mahomes, and they feel that's okay. We can go ahead and do that. No, you can't. Patrick is a once-in-a-lifetime player in terms of his ability to throw from ridiculous spots and be accurate. And Caleb does some good things, but it almost seems to me there are times where he intentionally puts the ball sidearm when he has the opportunity to make a quick, easy, normal, traditional throw to the same target. I'm just saying the manner in which he throws it. And I get concerned that when you get in the NFL, you can't do that. You have to do it.
I'm so happy you're here right now, because this is making my day. Once again, Caleb Williams a bust. A question on top of that. So I know you can't speak specifically on Caleb Williams, but we see time and time again these first-round quarterbacks fail. And if you look at a Patrick Mahomes, if you look at a Jordan Love, they came in with the right mindset that I'm going to sit, I'm going to wait, I'm going to make sure I learn the NFL and the speed. So when you're doing scouting on any player, not just even quarterbacks, what are you doing to judge the mindset of these players to know not only are they going to be a good fit in your organization, but they're going to have the right mindset to succeed in the NFL?
Well, there's many things you do. And I will say with quarterback, it's more difficult because, and I say this all the time, not to be sort of dismissive, but Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh, Coach Shanahan with the 49ers, they're pretty good at this. They can evaluate film generally and tell you which guys can throw the ball well, which guys know what's going on. But figuring out above the shoulders, which is the key for a quarterback more than any other position, is nearly impossible. And the first person that figures that out will become the richest person in football history because it's so difficult. So you do your best. You interview these young men. You grill them. You put them through. A lot of teams, one of the things that they like to do is they'll put together a reel, and they won't actually put it together. They'll reach out to the college and say, hey, you guys coached him this past year. Can you put every play where your staff said he made a mistake, whether it's he misread the defense, even if he threw a touchdown, or he called the wrong protection call and it led to pressure? Can you put a reel together of every play that every mistake? And then you watch that with the kid, and you try to get a feel for his explanation pattern. What does he say? Does he blame others? Or what you want to hear, and this is one of the things that the successful quarterbacks almost always say is, even if the receiver ran the wrong route, and it clearly is the wrong route, what you'll hear the quarterback say in those interviews is, hey, yeah, I did not do a good job making sure he understand the route he was supposed to run, as opposed to he ran the wrong route. You want the quarterback to always take the blame.
Okay,
so that's two ways to do it. Yeah.
Is it a bad sign when a quarterback writes "F-U" to the other team painted on his fingernails, as we've seen Caleb Williams do the past 2 years?
Well, I'll say this. It's a weird thing to me, but at the same time, there have been things about players that outwardly I remember going, oh my goodness. Then when you went to the school and you talked to the coaches and they explained why, it made sense. And you're like, okay, that doesn't bother me as much. So that's the other part of this. Like I'm telling you, we interview them, we make them watch their film. The bigger part is when a scout goes to a school, they're not going there to watch film. We can get film anywhere. I can log into my computer and watch every game Caleb Williams ever played on my laptop. The reason you go into the school, if you're a diligent scout, is to speak to 8, 9, 10 people there. You're going to talk to the video guy, the equipment guy, the trainer, the academic advisor, the position coach, everybody in the building to try to get a feel for the person, the work ethic, the intangibles, the intelligence, all of those things. Because if you go to a school and everybody is saying the exact same thing, there's a good chance they've been coached. Whereas if you go to a school and this general theme is the same, but everybody has different things they're telling you and stories to back that up, there's a good chance it's correct. And your job as a scout is to develop sources so that when you report to your team, this kid can mentally handle it. You don't have any doubts about it, because the quarterback has to be the hardest worker, the toughest guy, the most committed football player. They have to love the process, because everybody, and you can, Johnny Manziel's a great example. If you even listen to his interviews, he talks about in college how he was just basically showing up and playing. Well, in the NFL, everybody can be there on Sunday and talk about how great it is. It's fun. It's the Monday through Friday, the watching countless hours of film on tiny minutia to figure out where a DB's foot is as to giving away a certain coverage. The little things, the time they spend. Quarterbacks who don't enjoy that, or at least understand the importance and commit to doing it, are not going to survive in the NFL. And that's what teams are trying to figure out, not only about Caleb, but Jane Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy. What are they like in terms of football? They have to be sort of that junkyard dog. They have to be the guy who every minute of every day wants to know about football and wants to get better.
So, okay, you mentioned the other quarterbacks here. So, you know, as Dad told you earlier on, I'm not a big fan of really any of these. I don't think he is really either. Out of all these quarterbacks, especially it surprised me, J.J. McCarthy has just jumped up immensely into the draft. He was a second-round pick at the end of the year, and now he's talking about being number 4, number 5 overall. Out of these quarterbacks, which ones do you think has the best chance to succeed? And does it really depend on situation and where they go?
Well, first, the situation plays a huge part because, and I'm not trying to knock people in the NFL, but something I was told years ago by a former NFL quarterback who's now an analyst who I trust, he jokingly said to me, he said, if you look at it, quarterback is the worst coach position in professional football. And I said, why do you say that? Well, he said, it's easy. He said, everybody, rightfully, that's coaching in the NFL has a desire to be a head coach. Well, if you're on the offensive side of the ball, the way you become a head coach is you're an offensive coordinator. Well, that means it's about play calling. So even the quarterback coach is often working with the coordinator to come up with game plans. And they're coaching, hey, when you read the defense, do this. Not many quarterback coaches are really putting in the time, hey, that left foot, your toes are a little bit more pointed straight than they should be set. And your base isn't good. Your knees are a little too locked and you're throwing a little bit more straight-legged. You're not torquing your body to generate power. You're putting too much pressure on your elbow and it's going to lead to problems. So you don't have those guys focusing on the little things. So when you have a system like San Francisco, where they really do get into the nitty-gritty of a quarterback's minutia detail, like the Packers did with Aaron Rodgers, adjusting the way he held the ball coming out, those things make a difference in the development of a quarterback. Now, a great quarterback hopefully will overcome and at least be okay with bad situation and hopefully blossom when he's in a good situation. In terms of the quarterbacks in this year's draft, I explained to you my concerns with Caleb. Jaden Daniels is a very unique kid. I think when you watch the film, the potential for greatness is there. I really get excited about him. I think there's a lot of good decision-making, a lot of good arm talent. I think my only concern when I watch him is he looks, even though he's very tall, he looks frail. He looks really thin, and he runs with a reckless abandon. So I wonder, is he going to be that type of guy who's brilliant when he's healthy, but gets hurt a lot and his body breaks down? Drake May, I'm not sold on. Drake is a big, good-looking kid in terms of sort of the traditional pocket passer. When I watch him throw, it doesn't make me jump out and say, wow, that's an elite quarterback. I say, well, it's a good quarterback. There's something interesting there, but it doesn't blow me away. Now, McCarthy, and again, I don't mean to knock people, but this is sort of one of the misnomers of how the media covers the draft is, like you mentioned, he was a second-round pick. Well, in general, the media has really no idea what NFL teams are thinking of where players are graded in the fall, because even the GMs don't know until really January or February, because the scouts reports, you're talking each scout is writing 350 reports. GMs don't get a chance to look at all of them, and even the feedback they hear on some of them, they don't know it all. So the GMs, who are usually the ones who are sort of ferreting the information to the media initially, they're not even sure. They might say, oh, McCarthy's a good prospect. Yeah, he'll probably go in the first 3 rounds, and that's what the media hears, and they say second or third round. I did hear scouts throughout the fall say, hey, this JJ is legitimate. They said this kid's got a lot of the tools, a lot of the traits for a high-end starting quarterback in the NFL. I've heard a number of scouts tell me that they think he's the number 1 prospect in this year's draft. I tend to lean towards Daniels and McCarthy as my top 2. I've not studied them all like I have Caleb Williams, but McCarthy and Daniels look more NFL ready and polished and able to do the things I want to see without getting hurt, hopefully in Jaden's case, then I feel comfortable with Caleb or Drake May.
So who do you think is going to be – there's all sorts of rumors about the Vikings want to trade up. The Giants want to trade up. Who do you see trading up to try to get to that number 3 spot or number 4 with it, Arizona?
Well, I think both those teams you mentioned are definitely in the mix. And the reason is A, the Vikings can say all they want about we have a plan because they're very analytics driven in their front office. We have a plan. We didn't want to overpay for Kirk Cousins, and everybody in this building believes in that. It's all great to say that. If you don't have a quarterback in 2 years, if you've gone 4-13 and 5-12, there's a good chance you're all getting fired, regardless of how great you've convinced the owner that this is the way to go. So I think they feel some pressure to go get a quarterback. The Giants feel enormous pressure. I mean,
right.
They had the
You're
great
telling
start.
me Daniel Jones isn't the answer for the future in New York? Come on now.
Well, I'll tell you this, and trust me, I've missed on quarterbacks. Ryan Nassib is the highest rated quarterback I've ever given a grade to, so obviously I'm not perfect. But when I graded Daniel Jones, he graded out as a free agent in my system. So
wow,
there is something about him that doesn't match up, and it's a shame. He's a great kid. It's not due to lack of hard work or any of those things.
Yeah.
But if you look at that organization, they had, I think it was a 6-1 start or a 6-2 start 2 years ago, and everybody got all excited. And since then, they've pretty much been an awful team. There is no doubt in my mind they want to bring in somebody to challenge Jones, because they know if this is a losing season, there's a chance that both the GM and head coach could be going out the door. So I'd be stunned if they don't get a quarterback in this year's draft. I mean, there were rumors that they almost fired the GM and head coach after this season.
Yeah.
So to think they're not going to aggressively go get a quarterback, I'd be surprised, especially when you think about Arizona and the Chargers, who are in that top 5. Neither one of them is going to be drafting a quarterback as far as I've been able to tell. I would put my life on the fact the Chargers aren't. I believe the Cardinals are not, although you never know because Murray's been so up and down. Right. But those are 2 teams that are looking to get out. Mm-hmm. So I'd be surprised if both those teams don't get up.
Now let's hold on, back to J.J. McCarthy real quick. And I know you have a question, but this is interesting to me because you said he has such a high grade. I look at J.J. McCarthy and I see a kid that didn't throw a pass more than 20 yards except for 5 times last year. A kid that was surrounded by just amazing talent throughout his college career when he was succeeding. He reminds me a lot of A.J. McCarron back when you talk about Alabama days. You know, a kid that looked really good, a national champion, but really it was that talent around him. He really hasn't proved it in the NFL as a starter. You're not seeing that same thing in J.J. McCarthy?
There's a little bit of that. There's no question. Anytime a kid is surrounded by enormous talent, but let's be realistic. Caleb, him, Jaden Daniels, I mean, these guys have loads of talent around them. It's not like he's the only one. Are there issues when you watch him? Yeah, there's some games you watch him and you don't see that snap in the ball and you say, oh, gosh.
Yeah.
But there are some when you watch him and you see that ball come out, you see a tight, compact release, you see a nice ball with zip on the far side out throughout throws. I'm not saying he's a world beater. I'm not saying if I'm sitting at 1, I'm taking him. But I will tell you that I'd feel more comfortable with him than Drake May.
I agree with you there.
There's something there. Now, he's not a big kid, and I'm always leery. Not that I believe short quarterbacks can't succeed, but smaller guys do get hurt. And that's my concern is there's a little bit of a durability question there. But But I do like a lot of the mental stuff that I've been able to find out about this kid in terms of he is legitimately that kid that's going to be the first in the building. He's going to work until literally he drops. Football matters to him. So those things give me hope that he's going to get better with professional coaching. Not that he didn't have good coaching at Michigan, but just every quarterback has to improve when they become a pro. And if he has good coaching, he's going to take it and eat it up because he wants to get better.
Well, let me ask you a question regarding coaching. To me, one of the most interesting teams this year is Denver. Now, they just picked up Zach Wilson in the last 24 hours. Sean Payton probably sees a lot of Drew Brees in him. I don't know. He thinks he can save him. But is Denver going to try to move up? Is Denver going to try to move back? What are they going to try to do? They gave up a lot of draft capital to get another Wilson a couple of years ago with Russell.
They did. I think, and I don't know if it'll be in the first round, I do think they're going to bring in another quarterback. Whether it's moving up, which I'd be a little surprised if they went in that direction, just because, I mean, they've got to do something and get going in the right direction. So I think they're going to lean towards, hey, we've got the one quarterback now in Wilson. Let's try to ideally get one in the draft. And whether it's a guy like a Bo Nix, who there are some questions about
I love
in terms
Bo
of yeah, and there's a lot to like, because I think the physical question of does he have all the tools? Is there an elite arm? Those types of things you can debate. But this is a kid who went from Auburn to Oregon. He's been in school 6 years. He's matured. He's coming in. He understands what it takes to be a pro. I could see that being a guy that could slip into the second round, and all of a sudden Denver says, you know what? That's the guy we want to get. We're going to pair him with Wilson and let them battle. So I do think they're going to go get a quarterback. I just don't know if they're going to sacrifice so much to get into that upper echelon of the quarterbacks that'll go in the first top of the half of the first round.
All right. Now I've got a question. We're going to start talking about our favorite team. Obviously, we're in Wisconsin, so we're Packer fans. And we're going to go a little fanny on you.
Okay.
So the Packers have only gone once in the draft since Gutekunst took over, and that was obviously when they took Jordan Love. Other than that, they always go defense. So do you think they try to move up to get Cooper DeJean, injuries irregardless, or do they stay put and try to get an Amaris Mims from Georgia or somebody else, defensive tackle out of Texas or lineman out of Texas, I've heard has been rumored lately. What do you see them doing?
Before you answer, I do want to touch base on the fact that you just said fanny to describe us.
Fanboy?
That was...
Just stop it.
I do not want to be called fanny by anybody. All right, moving on. You can answer the question now.
That's all right. I will say this. I think, is it possible they'll move up? Of course it's possible. But if I were a betting man, I would say they're not going to. The reason I say that is I do think they're going to go defense. I tend to think that's the direction they're going to go. But I just look and I probably am putting too much weight on it, but Brian grew up in the Packers system. It's the only place he's ever worked. He saw what Ted did all those years and how successful it was. And Ted, although he traded occasionally, Ted was generally a guy that said, if I'm trading down, and I'm really sort of relying on our ability to identify guys correctly and build the best board. So I think that Brian's going to sit there and say, okay, if I'm going to trade, I'm going to trade within 3 or 4 picks to make up. If he has to go up, I'll go get the guy we're targeting a few picks up, but I'm not going to go 15 picks up to go get one guy.
Yeah.
So he may jump up a few spots if he says, I want to get Cooper, or maybe he wants to go get the kid from Missouri, Robinson, the defensive tackle, who's a little bit of a penetrator. But I'd be surprised if he went up. I think they're going to focus on defense. I don't think they're going to sell the farm to move up is probably the best way to say it.
Now, this is where I have a big concern with the Packers, because we tend to do this and it never works out. And so from your scouting expertise, I'm curious what you think on this. The Packers have had a tendency since Ted Thompson to take players that were injured in college and they happen to fall because they were hurt in college. And those injuries never stop. I'm thinking of Derek Sherrod. I'm thinking of, I can't think of his name, kid from Tennessee, doesn't matter. I see Cooper DeJean in that same sense. This is a kid that broke his leg in college. And so drafting him in the first round, somebody that, okay, we've already seen he has a leg injury. I don't think that's a good idea. Am I wrong on this?
Well, it's not so much are you wrong on this one situation. I think the one great thing that has sort of come about, the many great things through the analytics, is when I first got in the business, all the old scouts used to always joke, if he's hurt in college, he'll be hurt in the pros.
Right.
And analytics has proven this. But what analytics has done, which is spectacular, is it can really get into the nitty gritty of, hey, if he has these types of injuries, there's a much higher re-injury risk in the pros.
Yeah.
Or if he has this type of foot, back. I mean, the Liz Frank is a really bad one.
Right.
And the knee is a unique one because when you tear an ACL and they look at your knee, they're not just saying, oh, we tore his ACL. The biggest thing they want to know is how was the knee besides the ACL?
Sure.
Certain guys, they look at it and they say, gosh darn, if there was an ACL there, I wouldn't even know there was an injury. Whereas others, you go in and you go, oh my God, this looks like someone put a firecracker in there and blew the knee up.
Right.
So that's what they want to know. And you really have to trust your medical people. And if it's a broken bone, but not in the foot's petrifying because it just is what it is, the pressure, the explosion. But when it's a broken leg, most of the time, the medical people, if they say, hey, you don't have to worry about it, you can feel pretty confident that that broken leg is not going to be a long-term problem. The big thing you have to really do your homework on is this is where your scouts matter. They gather the info. The team, then it's never the scout's job to say, hey, I got the info. I'm going to make the medical decision. That's way above his pay grade. The scout has to put a warning. Hey, this kid's had some dings. And in Cooper's case, they got the full medical. I'm sure that their people have spoken to the people at Iowa, and they've done everything humanly possible to look at the x-rays, review his rehab, everything known to the sun. It is always risky taking players with an injury past. But you have to remember, when you're at the bottom of the first round, when you're 20 to 30, you rarely get a chance to take a guy. Now, obviously, there are players that slip in the draft that become great players, but you rarely get to take a guy in that top 5 to 7 picks that everybody believes is going to be a franchise rare talent. So when a kid slides that is considered in that elite top 5 to 7 area, but he's hurt, and you get a shot at him at 24, sometimes you have to say, you know what? We're not going to see a kid like this again. We're going to roll the dice because we feel our team is pretty dang good, and we have a young quarterback that even if we miss on this pick, we're probably going to be winning for the next 4 or 5 years. So it's great if he hits. If we miss, it isn't the end of the world. So that's part of the reason I think that Ted was able to do that, and I think that Brian sees that. Is it a risk? 100%. But when you're winning and you have the job security they do, you have a better comfort level taking guys with injury histories.
All right, so you mentioned slipping, so I have to jump on this one because every single year in the draft, we see a top player fall. And with all the quarterbacks going, projected at least to go in the top 12 picks, we got to assume that there's going to be some real good talent that gets lower in the draft that really shouldn't have been there. Who's the players you're keeping an eye on right now that could really take a fall?
Well, there's a few guys that I think have a chance. The Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback from Toledo.
Yeah.
And it's not to knock the kid. It's just I know that when teams start coming into debates, when they're saying, all right, do we take Arnold? Do we take Mitchell? Who do we take? Arnold's going to probably win most of the battles because he's an Alabama kid. Sure. So all of a sudden, Mitchell falls one spot, and then teams start looking at tackles. And I could see him sliding to the 15 to 20 range. He's not going to go down out of the first round. I will say I could see the Fuaga kid, the tackle from Oregon State, the Mims kid, the tackle from Georgia. I could see one of them being one of those guys, or even the Guyton tackle from Oklahoma, being one of those guys that at the end of the first round, all of a sudden people are like, holy smokes, they're still on the board. Because this is a very tackle-deep draft.
Right.
Especially when you consider the kid like Graham Barton from Duke that some teams view as a center, some as a tackle. There are a lot of really good tackles. So it's sort of your flavor of the month. A handful of teams may have Barton, may have the kid from Arizona above some of these more well-known tackles. So you could see a kid like Fuaga all of a sudden start sliding on draft day, and everybody think, oh my God, teams have some information. It's not so much that. When you have so many good players at one position, every team's going to have them ranked differently. So I could see one or two of those tackles sliding down the board.
Russ, we appreciate your time this afternoon. Now, we're going to be talking again in just a couple days because Kyle and I, along with Brian Jonas, are going to be hosting the NFL Draft Watch Party on NGBN TV, and you're going to be giving your input throughout the first round. So we're looking forward to that and having you on all evening to evaluate these picks.
It is going to be great. I'm very excited. To me, there's nothing like the draft. It's a wild thing because I can never enjoy watching it because it's like, to me, watching paint dry. But I love the fact of debating the picks when you're actually talking about them as opposed to watching it.
Hey, you just told me I'm right about Caleb Williams, and I know that's not exactly what you said, but I'm taking it that way.
That's
you are
great.
My best friend now.
When he becomes a star and you point to me as the guy missing on him, I just don't want to hear about it.
If he becomes a star, I'm just deleting everything. I don't want to hear it from Bears fans, you know? Thank you, Russ, so much. We'll talk to you Thursday.
That sounds great, guys. Thanks for having me today.
I love having guests on that just show you I'm right. Why do you not just believe me?
He didn't say you were right.
In a roundabout way.
Not even in a roundabout.
A little bit of a roundabout way.
Okay, you believe what you want.
I will.
The insight was incredible.
It was.
It's going to be a great draft night.
I never thought about the CFL. I didn't know they needed 8 players starting and 25% being Canadian. I had no idea.
We learn something every day.
We do.
And look, I was surprised by the fact that Green Bay is not that unusual with the fact that they've got those silos.
Unusual to be loved by. Apparently, the last few weeks are just karaoke with Kyle. I don't know why.
Wow. Thank you, Tom Jones.
That surprised me too. It really did. I just learned something new today with that. I really thought that they were a very unique situation.
It's going to be the draft is always fun.
It is.
Next year's going to be in Green Bay.
Yep.
So hopefully we're going to be up there broadcasting live at that point.
We're going to be up there. It's going to happen.
Okay. We're going to be up there next year.
If they let us broadcast live, we're still waiting to figure that part out.
Yeah, there you go. My question is going to be around the Jets, and we didn't get a chance to ask him, but obviously Rodgers is there.
Yeah.
Will they protect him, or will they do something that Green Bay never did and give him a weapon?
I mean, here's the thing with Bowers. Bowers is very much a wide receiver. He's like a Jimmy Graham type of player, which means he's going to be good, but you can't have him in there run blocking. He's not big enough to do it.
He's the tight end that everybody is rumored to take.
He is. He's the top tight end. But again, he needs to bulk up if you're going to have him as a blocker as well. He's a wide receiver. He's a glorified wide receiver. And if you do not draft an offensive lineman to protect Rodgers, you're dumb. If Joe Alt is there, you pull the trigger on him.
Yeah, because I don't think they're going to bring in David Bakhtiari to fill that left tackle and think, oh, we're good for 17 games.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. You know what we have to do still? As we say on every single show, you cannot have a conversation with your dad without your dad getting the last word. So it is all you.
So the draft is coming up in just a couple short days. All of these NFL prospects better beware. This draft is not the goal. It's just the beginning. When you get drafted like these guys, first to seventh round, it really doesn't matter. Your career hasn't finished and achieved its ultimate goal. It's only beginning. Now is when the real work begins. You need to get into those camps. You need to work with the veterans that are there and act like you really want to be there. Don't go in acting like you're a hotshot. Hey, I was a first round draft pick. That doesn't mean anything. You've done nothing in the NFL yet. As with any endeavor you take in life, just getting there is not the final goal. You have to do the extra work in order to succeed. If you're in sales, getting the job is great, but then you better go out and exceed quota every day and every month, or you're not going to be there that long. The same goes for these prospects. Look at the quarterbacks in the past. 3, maybe 4 out of every 2 or 3 years are going to make it and make it to a second contract. Most of these guys are going to be here for one contract and they're out. I suggest you take the time, and I'll even use Jordan Love. Use his example. You go in there, you work, you keep your mouth shut, you improve, so when you do get on the field, you're ready to go. Aaron Rodgers, when he came into the Packers back in 2005, was not ready to play at all. Bart Starr took him aside and said, look, you're behind Brett Favre. Sit and watch and learn. And he did that. So when Favre finally left, Rodgers stepped in and turned out to be one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. These prospects need to do the same things, whether it's Caleb Williams, whether it's the offensive lineman Mims, whoever it is, your work is just beginning. Take the time, keep humble, and work your behinds off so that hopefully you'll have a long career in the NFL.
And you, in a nutshell, just helped explain why Caleb Williams will fail. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. This has been Sports Talk with Dad. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.